It started after a missions trip to India for me, and this is back before cell phones and stuff were around the world. It was 1998, and there I just experienced witnessing a lot of poverty. Kids taking care of kids, and just a completely different culture, a huge culture of need. And when I got back here to the United States, my husband picked me up at the airport, and of course just chatting in the car coming home about all those sights and smells and sounds and impressions. And as we got kind of just past the downtown area coming north on 75, there were three things that just kind of jumped out at me visually in my line of sight. One was a billboard with Gap jeans. I was raising daughters, so I knew how expensive those Gap jeans were. Another was a billboard with Rolex watches, and of course we know how expensive those are. And in the distance there was a steeple and just kind of low-income area that's just and all of that just kind of hit me in 1 second, and out of my mouth came, "There's so many resources here in the United States. Why isn't it working?" And that question that fell out of my mouth is what launched this whole ministry. And when I got home and started to go back to work and getting my life back to normal, that question just haunted me, if you will. And finally I heard God saying cupboard thing in my ear, and I'm like, oh God, you've got the wrong girl, because I had never been in a cupboard thing, a food pantry, and anything like that. And but after weeks of it just lingering, that call, that urgency to do something, I was like, all right, God, I'll be hands and feet. You've got to name it. You've got to resource it. You got to teach me what to do, because I know nothing. And within a week of just surrendering, he named it in a dream, Papa's Pantry. And everything I've learned has just been baby steps that he's taken me through. I was working full time, and so it became food delivery in people's homes on my evenings and weekends. And when you go into some of these homes and you see empty cabinets and empty refrigerators, I'm talking empty, with kids in there and grandma, sick on a daybed in the family room, it just hits you hard. And it's like, well, how else can I help you? And so that's the baby steps of how our training center started. Because if people needed jobs, I was, working at Home Depot corporate, so I could help people with how to do resumes and how to present themselves to get jobs. And it was working. And they'd get the jobs, or they had an income, but they didn't know how to manage that money. I would teach them how to balance their statements that would come in from the bank each month. Envelopes unopened, bills unopened, we'd sit there together and go through it, and I would teach them. And then they didn't need me anymore because they were on their feet. And so for the first 5.5 years, it was part-time, doing it that way. And then God gave me the green light. I could leave corporate, take Papa's full-time. And over the years, we've got, had the Master's Training Center, which has been our educational division. So anybody could come for training, stability training, to get on their feet. And it seemed like in the last few years, we started to take our training to other programs, to a lot of addictions recovery programs, domestic violence programs, and it started to become its own life. But the name Papa's Pantry, a food pantry, did not encompass all those other training services that we offered. And so we changed our name legally to Encompass Ministries. And Papa's Pantry is still our food program. It will always be at the heart and soul of everything that we do. Our mission is to get people on their feet. And, if they're hungry, they're not going to listen to the best training in the world because they're hungry. So it's just a very comprehensive program that we just offer to anybody who just needs a little love, encouragement, help, food, all that kind of stuff. People are tender, and many times they're afraid, and there's a wall. And I've learned lessons from God, to not be judgmental, but to offer encouragement out of wisdom, helping to guide decisions out of wisdom, and just being, what would please God, and being that person, and bringing in the right staff, with a heart and a calling to serve. It's more than a job. I mean, it's a daily, we get up and we start our every day with devotions as a staff and team, and we pray over our day. We pray over everybody's who's coming in that day, over their situations, over interviews that might be that day. But my biggest lesson is just to trust God.